Kesenya and welcome to Astrolada. I'm your Astrolada weather girl and this is the report for this week's Astro Weather. So I don't know about you, but this week has been, for me, pretty hectic. And you'll note I didn't do an Astro Weather report last week, and that was because I was just so under the emotional weather, shall we say, with all this energy in Virgo, a sign I find very difficult to handle. So that's why there was no Astro Weather report, but I'm back and we're on the job again this week. So it's lovely to be back with you. We are looking at the moon in Pisces this week, and then is occurring on the 13th of September, Friday the 13th. This is quite interesting actually that it's Friday the 13th, and a lot of people who are into sort of kooky stuff, they will, often host a, let's watch a horror movie night on Friday the 13th, or let's make something really spooky and kooky out of it. But what's really, really interesting is that there is a theory that abounds in occult circles that the number 13 is actually a power number and is the most supreme number. The theory, I won't go into great depth with it here. I would like to prepare a video on this theme at some point in the future. But essentially, the theory is that thousands of years ago, before the perfection of the solar system was mucked with, and the whole solar system has been off kilter ever since, I won't go into the explanation of how that happened here, but that prior to that time, there were actually 13 signs, 13 planets, and 13 houses. And therefore, 13 is considered to be, in some occult circles of belief, a power number. So it's interesting that we have moved into this current era that we are in the history of the universe and the world, where 13 is now considered to be the unlucky number, the detrimental number. And I find that fascinating. Actually, in ancient, really ancient times, it was considered to be a power number. So in my estimation, because I very much align with this theory, in my estimation, the fact that this is occurring on Friday the 13th is actually a good luck omen. Now the full moon is occurring this week at 20 degrees of Pisces over here, and it's making this, the moon here is making an opposition with the sun at 20 degrees of Pisces for the moon and 20 degrees of Virgo for the sun. So if you have a planet there, you can expect to really feel this energy at 20 degrees of Pisces or 20 degrees of Virgo. And even if you have a natal planet within orb of say 5 degrees of this, you might feel that gets activated in some way through this full moon, and we'll talk about what that activation looks like in just a second. But 20 degrees is the degree of Scorpio. So not only are we having this full moon fall on the 13th day, that power number, we're also having it fall at the degree of Scorpio, which is this intense occult sign. Scorpio, very heavily connected with hidden things, things that aren't seen, with things that we are not allowing into our conscious awareness. We know they're there. They're like the skeletons in the closet, but we keep them hidden. Unlike the degree of Pisces, which is more about things we're unconscious of. So with the Scorpio degree, we might find that a lot of hidden things come to the light with this full moon. The full moon itself represents illumination, things reaching their fruition and their fullness. The full light of the moon is very, very powerful, even if it is just reflected sunlight. Sometimes it's bright enough to see very clearly without any, if you're driving along on a full moon night, some nights you don't need your headlights on. I wouldn't recommend it, but you don't need them to see where you're going. The moon can be that bright. But the spirit of this illumination of this full moon is going to reveal some things that may have been hidden from us in our lives by other people. Remember, the polarity that this represents is very similar to my own chart. One house represents the self, the other represents other people. So things that have been hidden from you by other people might become illuminated now. things that you've hidden from yourself, denied, things that you've been in denial about, things that you've been ignoring, things that you've buried your head in the sand about, hoping that they'll go away. They may also be revealed now as well with the illumination provided by the moon at the degree of Scorpio. You might also discover new things about occult matters like astrology or mysticism or esoteric practices. So in many senses of the word, it is going to be a full moon of illumination of things that are hidden for all of us, because it's at this degree of Scorpio. The moon will be illuminating the hidden things. Now you will also notice that this is creating a grand trine with the planet Jupiter. Jupiter is at roughly, I think it's 17 degrees up there, so he is within orb of this 20-degree new moon. And as you can see down here, the moon is conjunct with Neptune, which is also roughly at 17 degrees of Pisces. So there is a lot of activity going on with these two right now, the Jupiter and Neptune, and then tying in with the moon and the sun. And the energy of a T-square, or a square triangle as some people refer to it. What does this bring to our lives this week when it's involved with the new moon? Well, we can have more challenges because of this. So we might have to push harder. We might have to work, deeper and stronger and more intensely this week to achieve what we want to achieve. But we can have tremendous success because of this. In the Vedic system, a T-square is considered to be one of the most activating shapes in the horoscope. And this is activating at a material level, because we're driven by this inner resolve, inner determination, inner drive to actually get somewhere, despite the circumstances going on around us, despite these hidden things coming to the light and being revealed. Within us, because of this T-square, we have the determination, the resolve, the energy to put into succeeding and up-leveling and moving through this period. It's also highly energizing, and of course we have Mars as part of the full sign aspect going on here. Mars is fully aspecting the moon in this case, and so there is an energy. Mars is energized going on, and Jupiter is expanding the whole bang lot up there. So we can find that we have the energy to put into the fruition of our dreams right now. And I say the fruition of our dreams because that is really what a full moon represents. What have you been working on for the past 2 weeks? What have you been establishing and helping to come to birth, come to new light? What intentions did you make for the new moon 2 weeks ago in Virgo? Well, now will be the fruition of whatever it is that you've been working on over the past 2 weeks. Maybe it's some realm with relationships or business. Maybe it's you've been working on a project at work. Maybe you've been trying to renovate your house. Maybe you've started a new painting or a new novel or a new website, and you've established something and you're getting something going over the past 2 weeks. Now is the fruition. It will be a culmination or a crisis. Either you will have done what needed to be done to achieve your intentions, or you'll be in a situation of, oh my God, well that didn't come true. I didn't manifest that. I didn't achieve that. The one good thing though is that the energy given by this T-square can really activate you towards reaching that fulfillment right now. So if you're feeling enthused and feeling like you can push through the circumstances, you can really make a difference. So as I mentioned earlier, I've felt quite off emotionally this week because of all this energy of Virgo being directed at my rising sign. It's been challenging, but there are solutions. And what are the solutions that we see whenever we have a full moon? Well, it means that we need to concentrate on integrating this part of our horoscope and that part of our horoscope. Wherever Pisces falls for you needs to be integrated with wherever Virgo falls for you. For me, this is an integration of myself, who I am, first house, with other people, trying to reach a middle ground, a win-win situation, trying to alleviate any arguments, trying to honor myself and be fair to myself, and trying to support and love others at the same time. It's a balancing act, an integration of both, whatever house the moon falls in and whatever house the sun falls in. It's pulling them together to create balance and harmony, or attempt to, at least. That's the nature of the polarity of the moon opposite the sun that we go through every single month when we have a full moon. And so we need to, every full moon, we need to look at where the sun and the moon are falling. In which houses do we need to balance out what is maybe out of whack, what's maybe being very polaric, and we need to pull it back together and create win-win situations and balance and harmony regarding whatever that is. I'll briefly run through each of those things. I'm not going to do an all signs reading today because I've got something special coming up for you next, but I will mention just briefly each house. If you're dealing with this energy and it's falling like I'm having it in the first house and the seventh house, well, you're integrating yourself and others, all your relationships and your love for self. You have to reach a middle ground, a win-win situation. I'm going to fly through these. This is not a big, long, extended reading today. If you're Aries rising, well, you are needing to integrate the 12th house and the 6th house. So you need to integrate spirituality and creativity with practical service to the world in some way. If you happen to be Taurus rising, well, this is falling in your 11th house and your 5th house. You need to integrate the polarity of the community and others with the self and the self-expression, and make a middle ground there somewhere for you. Friends versus self. If you are Gemini rising, this is falling in your 10th house and your 4th house. And so for you guys, you are needing to integrate career with home and reach a middle ground somewhere there. And you've got the strength and capacity to do it through this T-square. If you are Cancer rising, then this is falling in your 9th house and your 3rd house. So you need to integrate the respect that you have for your mentors, or your desire for learning and expansion and growth of the soul, belief systems, that sort of thing, with the practical learning that we see through the 3rd house, the skills of our hands. So integrating higher learning with the skills of our hands, relationships with mentors, and relationships with our teachers and our siblings as well. We need to create win-win situations between these two circumstances of life. If you're Leo rising, this is falling in your 8th house and 2nd house, and quite simply, these are two financially connected houses. The 8th house is other people's money, windfalls, rewards, inheritances, taxes, tax returns and so forth that you receive, other people's money, other people's property, and your own property, your own financial security. You need to find a win-win situation between the money you earn and the money that you receive, perhaps from the government through a pension or through some sort of a grant or something like that. Might be one example. If you happen to be Virgo rising, well, just like me, this is falling in the house of self and others. So you guys, if you're Virgo rising, might be similar to what I'm doing, dealing with creating win-win situations for the self, honoring the self, putting, appropriate boundaries in place to protect and honor the self, and also honoring and uplifting and blessing others at the same time, and creating a win-win situation between yourself and others. If you're Libra rising, or Libra moon, or Libra sun, if you want to interpret it that way, that's fine. If this is your number one sign, then this energy is falling similarly to Aries in your 12th house, 6th house. So once again, it's creating a win-win solution between spirituality and creativity and your practical service to the world. This is in a nutshell. I could go into a lot more depth, but I'm keeping this simple today because there's something else I want to share with you after this. If you're Scorpio rising, this is falling in your 11th house and 5th house. So again, it's community values, community purpose and intent, as polarically opposite the self and the self-intent and your own personal agenda. And so there's a need to integrate both, to balance and harmonize both. If you happen to be Sagittarius rising, this is falling at your 10th house and your 4th house. Quite simply, you guys need to integrate the balance between home and work, or home and career, family and career, or bosses and family. So making a win-win situation where everybody wins in those realms. And if you're Capricorn rising, you'll be looking to create some sort of polaric integration between your, what have we got here, your 3rd house and your 9th house. This is very much connected to higher learning and knowledge and expansion of your mind through some means. That can be through travel, it can be through connecting with inspirational figures. Somehow that needs to be polarically integrated with your 3rd house of skills of the hands, learning practical application for perhaps your higher learning. Maybe you've just got a degree in something and you're like, well, now how can I practically apply this to make some use of in my life? So you might be trying to integrate practical learning and higher learning in some way. And finally, Aquarius rising. You'll be integrating the polarity of the money houses, 2nd house and 8th house in this case. 8th house is other people's money and other people's resources, so tax returns that come from the government, grants, loans, things like inheritances and superannuation and those sorts of things that you might be looking at, and making some sort of a win-win situation, or joining together the polarities with your 2nd house, which is the money you make and the money you have to enjoy the pleasures and the indulgences of life. So I just wanted to finish this week's weather report by sharing with you that I've been working on a webinar for the past year, actually, putting together a lot of information that I want to share with you. This webinar I've titled Hindu Astrology Techniques for Western Astrologers. So if you're hungering for more knowledge and understanding, this webinar might be just the ticket for you. And if you are interested, just so you know, there's a link below. You can go to the courses page on Astrolata and make your purchase there. And I'm really excited to offer this webinar at a discounted price for the next 2 weeks. I've got my Astrology of Many Marriages webinar at a discounted rate as well, if you would like to purchase that and learn about will you marry again, or the potential for more than one marriage seen in your chart. But this webinar that I've been preparing, I'm really, really excited about. This webinar is all about Hindu astrology, and it's about 3.5 hours long, so it's quite extensive. As I said, I've been preparing it for a year now, and there are many chapters that we cover. We're going to look at different assessment tools for Vedic astrology in your chart. We're going to look at the dashes and the dasha systems, and I'm going to help give you some guidance on how to work out what dasha you're in and what it might mean to be in whatever dasha that you're in. We're going to look at Raj Yogas, which are the indicators of a royal union of planets. And if you have one, what are the great benefits it's going to bring to your life? We're going to look at many indicators in Vedic astrology, things like life and longevity. We're going to look at passion. We're going to look at death and disease. We're going to look at knowledge. And we're also going to look at wealth as an indicator through Vedic means as well. We're going to look at dignities of planets. We're going to look at aspects that planets and signs make. We're going to look at the Bhavat Bhavam system. So this is a jam-packed webinar for you to learn and enjoy a new realm of astrology. Now this webinar is geared specifically to people who have a good knowledge already of Western astrology, just the foundational elements. It doesn't mean that you have to be practicing as an astrologer, but you need to know what the planets rule It's helpful to know the houses and the signs as well. So if you know that, then this webinar you'll find helpful. You do need a bit of prior knowledge to buoy you up here. But the design of this webinar is to help broaden your knowledge of another system of astrology. And it's my prayer that it helps you discover new skills, new techniques that you can apply when you look at your own chart or your friends' charts or whatever. I want to help you to understand the Hindu system as clearly as possible. And by Hindu, I mean Jyotish, I mean Vedic, I mean even Jaimini is covered here as well. I want you to dip your toe in that whole realm of astrology and maybe whet your appetite to take some further study or to buy a book and look into it further and go deeper with this type of astrology, because you can go very, very deep. It's hugely complex. But this is just skimming the surface. This webinar is all about the basic techniques, the basic foundations for Hindu astrology. But it is not a webinar to discuss beliefs, whether one system is better than another or one system is more right than another. That's not the purpose of this webinar at all. It's also not a premise to discuss religion, because I don't see astrology as a religion. I see it as a science. This is not a webinar to explain the analysis of why they use certain techniques, how they've come to the point of implementing certain techniques. It's not going into that greater depth where we assess the whys and whereofs for what their techniques are. It's just simply looking at the techniques. And it's not a webinar to promote this method over any other method. This is just one facet of what I use in my work. And so I'm not really here to be pushing one facet more than another because I use many. So it's simply to provide knowledge in a different realm that people may not be familiar with. I would love to meet you there in the Hindu Astrology Techniques for Western Astrologers webinar. Can't wait. So thanks for joining me. It has been a delight to connect with you again this week, and I look forward to having another full weather report for you next week when I'm not so much under the weather, shall we say. Thank you all, and God bless.